Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Okay, today's speaker is Tom Moon. He's a psychotherapist in San Francisco, works primarily with gay men, specializes in using mindfulness as a tool in psychological exploration. His spiritual home is Spirit Rock. And because I had forgotten to bring the description of the introduction, I asked him how to introduce him, and he said most people call him Her Holiness.
I didn't say that.
Today's talk is on equanimity. Does everyone have a handout? Okay, we'll get one.
That Her Holiness comment actually came. It came from Jack Kornfield, the executive director of Spirit Rock. Evan Kavanaugh is a gay man, and he didn't like the term executive director, and he said he wanted another more descriptive term. And Jack Kornfield said, "Well, how about Her Holiness?" That's where that came from. So the topic is equanimity. Does everyone have a handout? Everyone does? Good. What the handout is a brief description of what I'm going to be saying, kind of a summary of what I'm going to be saying. And what I want to do is actually do one of the traditional equanimity concentration practices. And so we'll be using the phrase for equanimity practice: all beings are the heirs of their karma. Their happiness and unhappiness depend on their own actions more than on my wishes for them. And in this practice, you can also, if you want, use one of the alternative forms of the phrase, sort of more modern forms of the same idea. The second page, there's a Tibetan equanimity practice, which we won't do today. It's basically a practice in seeing the friend, the enemy, and the stranger with the same degree of open-heartedness. And it's a little involved, but the instructions are all there, so I thought I put it there because I thought if people wanted to do that at home, it might be an interesting practice to try. So equanimity is the English translation of the Pali term upekkha, which literally means to look over. And it implies the kind of non-reactivity that develops in mindfulness practice. It's the wisdom to be able to see clearly what's going on without reactivity. Equanimity is the fourth of the Brahma-viharas, also known as the four immeasurables, which are the four qualities of the awakened heart. The other three are metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, and mudita, or sympathetic joy. And upekkha, equanimity, always comes last on the list because it's considered the protection of the other three. The other three are about the opening of the heart, and then equanimity is the wisdom factor which gives it balance. A typical spiritual emergency that happens when people start doing intensive spiritual practice is that the heart opens up. It's just a natural process. And then what often happens is people become intensely aware of the immensity of suffering in the world. And a kind of a panic, a dismay, or a despair can set in. The Pali term for that is samvega. It's actually what the Buddha experienced when he realized, at the beginning of his journey that the amount of suffering that there was in the world and how inescapable it was. So that Samvega can just take you away, unless there is the wisdom factor of equanimity to provide balance. Equanimity is basically based on a deep understanding and acceptance of the way things are. But right away, misunderstanding can develop because the way things are is George Bush is president. We're in this beastly war in Iraq. There's, genocide in Darfur and on and on and on. So what, you're just going to smile serenely and accept it all? Well, bully for you. That's not what equanimity means. And that's not what acceptance means. Equanimity does not mean indifference or aloofness. It doesn't mean complicity in what's going on. It means none of that. Because the acceptance that's referred to is about the truths of existence that the Buddha pointed to. Briefly, the first of those, of course, is the truth of impermanence, that it is the nature of everything that arises to pass away. And then following on that is the truth of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness that results from the fact of impermanence, because it means that no worldly state of affairs, no worldly pleasure or happiness can last. We're on shifting sands, and there is no secure refuge in anything worldly. Another of the deep truths, of course, is karma, which broadly speaking just means that the world, we live in a lawful universe in which everything happens according to causes and conditions. And then the application of the law of karma to human affairs in what I sometimes call the two wheels. The first of the wheels is the cycle of dependent origination, which explains in really exhaustive detail how suffering arises in human life, how it's related to ignorance and to craving. So that's one of the wheels. The other is the wheel of the Dharma, which explains the causes and conditions for the cessation of suffering. So those are the truths that are accepted in equanimity. They're held to be immutable and eternal truths. A Buddha can elucidate them, but not even a Buddha can change them. This is just how things are. Interesting to note that not everything in Buddhism is impermanent. It could be noticed that there are truths which are held to be immutable and unchangeable and eternal. So there are. So equanimity is a kind of a protection. What is it? It's a protection against the 8 worldly winds: praise and blame, success and failure, pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute. So our fortunes go up and down in life, but equanimity is a quality of the heart which can provide a sense of balance through all of it. And there are 7. The Buddha was a list maker. Might have been thought to have OCD. I think those lists came down to us because for 500 years none of this was written down. It was recited. All the suttas begin with "Thus have I heard." It was a monk memorizing the sutta and then passing it down to future monks for 5 centuries. So lists were very important in preserving the teachings. So 7 mental qualities support the development of equanimity. They are virtue or integrity. If you live by the moral principles of non-harming, then it's said that you can go into any assembly of people and feel blameless. The second quality is faith. Or sadha, which is also translates as conviction or confidence. This is often a lot of people say, in Buddhism you don't have to have faith, and it's kind of true. You don't really have to believe anything that can't be verified, but there is a kind of faith in confidence in the teachings, confidence that they work essentially. The Buddha when he began his journey, he went out of the palace. You know the story, and he met the four heavenly visitors. He saw a sick person, an old person, and a corpse. Were the first three, and he realized, my God, it is the nature of all of us to, get sick and to die and to suffer. And that was the moment of samvega, this dismay and despair over the nature of existence. And then the fourth heavenly visitor was he saw a renunciate sitting in deep meditation, and there was the embodiment of confidence that there might be a way out, that there might be practices or a way of life that leads out of this dilemma. So that's the kind of confidence that's referred to. The third quality is a well-developed mind. Just as working at the gym helps develop physical strength, practices that cultivate calm, concentration, and mindfulness brings strength, balance, and stability. The fourth is really important. It's a sense of well-being. The Buddha was not just known as Buddha, the awakened one. He was also known as the happy one. It's kind of interesting. He was happy. In fact, that was the main attraction when on the morning after his enlightenment, all the people who'd rejected him because he wasn't practicing austerities anymore, they looked at him and there was all this light and joy coming out of him, and they said, what happened? How can we get this? His followers, his disciples, were said to be a very happy group of people. So the idea is that the spiritual practice cultivates a sense of well-being that is more or less independent of your life circumstances and is a much surer refuge than things outside of oneself. Number 5, understanding or wisdoms help us to understand. This is really important, that other people are responsible for their own decisions, which helps us to be compassionate toward the suffering of others without being buffeted by a false sense of responsibility for them. I find this really helpful in my therapy practice. Like, for instance, working with drug addicts or alcoholics, doing everything you can to help people get sober, and then finally the decision is theirs, and ultimately the acceptance that has to come in equanimity is acceptance that I can't make anybody do anything. A little digression here. A few years ago in my therapy work, I was really kind of dry and burnt out, and I went on a vacation and it didn't help much. So I went on a retreat at Hubbard Hot Springs to see Adyashanti. Do you know Adyashanti, the Zen teacher? Really beautiful man, a very deeply realized man, in my opinion. And, I went up and talked to him, and I said, I'm really feeling that I just can't help anybody right now. And his advice to me was basically, he said, you'd probably be a lot better therapist if you'd stop trying to help people. Which was a great equanimity teaching.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.